team are doing to bring so many people together. It's a mutual effort, and I think having like-minded people to bring opportunities like this to the students, and helping them grow in that sense is super helpful. So anything that I can do, do reach out all the time. It's interesting, isn't it? With the pandemic, I was chatting to loads of people recently because it's actually increased the numbers of people wanting to do medicine, and it's one of those paradoxical concepts, really, in that sense, because you would expect people to be put off by the pandemic, and you'd kind of think, well, if you had this pandemic and people are working harder in hospitals, you see doctors with the masks over their faces that had loads of rashes and all those things, and you would think that people would like to get away a bit from that self-sacrificing kind of like nature. However, it's completely the opposite way around. So we had around 21% increase in applications this year. There's been around 6,000 more applicants applying, and that's quite interesting, I think, as a concept. And you may be wondering why. Well, I think it's because medicine fits in so many of the things that we as human beings look for when we try to evolve, because it gives you that greater purpose and to be part of the greater good. And so there's been also this narrative around the TV media and all around the UK, but also abroad, about hospital doctors or nurses, healthcare professionals being thought of as heroes. And so everybody started kind of saying, oh, I want to become a hero. But it's funny because myself and my colleagues hated the hero mentality. And it's really, really interesting because everybody in the media would like to say, oh no, doctors are heroes. And they did this program on a Thursday where they made a clap for the doctors and for the healthcare professionals. And they would clap at 6 p.m. or something like this on a Thursday. And it's interesting because myself, the other surgeons, the other doctors, the nurses, we were all kind of appreciative of those efforts, of the gratitude, but the idea of heroes mentally burdened all of us, because in a way we didn't really want to be heroes. We were just wanted to be human beings, wanted to complain the same as the other people who were working during tough times, and wanted to have access to the same kind of protection that human beings make errors, they sleep, they get food. And we're not, as soon as you make somebody a hero, it means they can put up with everything that you give them or you test that way, in that sense. So it's a bit of an interesting narrative in that direction. And I always just teach students to aspire to become doctors, because doctors are first of all human beings, and everything that is achieved through long years in medical school, through long years of discipline and interaction with the patient. And it really takes a lot to be good, not at the theory, but at the human interaction. So the empathy that comes with the profession, the compassion that comes in with that, and all the other skills such as communication and listening. Those are things that nobody will give you unless you keep on going forward. But it's interesting how things are going at the moment. I think the vaccination program is being quite effective. So far, we're still in lockdown. There's still no international travel for us. There's no events happening around, and it's been like this for the past few months. But things are looking better, and international travel is starting from the 17th of May, so slowly getting there. In that sense as well.
That is
We're looking forward to visiting Dubai again.
Yeah, we can't wait to have you come back to Dubai. I want to give you a proper introduction. So students are now entering the room. We're going to have students joining, but I want to give you a proper introduction. We didn't do that well before. I want to introduce Dr. Bogdan Jurka, who is I'm going to pronounce that. I'm just going to read the letters out here. Dr. Bogdan, BMBS, Bachelor of Science, MBA, Healthcare. Dr. Bogdan is not only a London-based doctor, but also the author of an international best-selling book, The Unofficial Guide to Getting into Medical School, professionally and outside medical school mentoring. Dr. Bogdan is a world-renowned healthcare leader with research and work impacting on national and international healthcare policy. His work has been recognized through over 50 national and international prizes and awards, including the Community Impact Awards, and being invited to meet His Royal Highness, the Prince of Wales, on 3 occasions. He's worked with several high-profile clinicians, scientists, Harvard academics, national healthcare system leaders, and has had an impact on healthcare policy, making on a global scale. Dr. Bogdan has sat on several interview panels and has tutored over 3,000 applicants. I'm going to say that again, 3,000 applicants who have successfully obtained a place in medical school in the UK. He is currently working as a pediatrics doctor in London, south of Thames, a clinical entrepreneur fellow, and a collaborator at Harvard Global Health Institute. You know, Dr. Bogdan, whenever I think about bringing spotlight speakers to Dubai English Speaking College, I think who would our students really learn the most from on their experiences? And I feel like with you, we're not just giving them an outlook on the working life of a professional doctor. We're giving them the whole roundabout picture of what it's like to be in medicine, what it's like to apply to medical school, what you really need to be applying. And I have to say, and I know you're going to be talking about this today, but your journey into medical school wasn't the journey that most expatriate students expect it to be. You did not take the road most traveled. You did not take the easy path. You really did work through challenge and change. And I think it's important that anybody watching this right now looks at you. And I think sometimes young people look at professionals, successful professionals like yourself, Dr. Bogdan, and think, wow, I want to be like that. I want to get through those experiences. But what is really important is that young people understand the journey. And that's the journey we want to be talking about today. So I'm going to kind of zoom out into the background. I'm going to switch off my audio and my video, but I'm here. I'm going to be checking the chat box as students are joining. Use that chat box if you want to ask Dr. Bogdan any questions. At the end, we're going to have a Q&A. Put your hand up and we will ask you to switch your mic on, but keep your video off because we are recording. And of course, use those reaction buttons. Give Dr. Bogdan some love. Let him know that he's doing a fabulous job as we go through. I will see you in the Q&A.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Well, what an incredible introduction. And I'm deeply humbled by that. But I must say, I think I'll start by saying that in spite of everything that Maria was saying, I'm not a smart or intelligent person. I'm a bit of a hard worker. So like she said, my upbringing and also my pathway into medicine is not the one traveled by many. And so I'm hoping that I will impart that knowledge with you today in that sense as well. I'm hoping I'll convince you by the end of this that I'm a hard worker and not an intelligent or naturally smart born person for that reason. But what I think is also worth mentioning that behind every success story, there's always a bunch of mountain of failures, and I'm hoping to convey that to you because this is what I wish somebody taught me when I was at your age. And so at the moment I'm 27 years old, and I'm quite grateful to have had so many opportunities to be involved both nationally and internationally in the healthcare sector and to teach students for that reason. But what I'll do is I will start a bit on the medical school process, then we can chat a bit about life and success in general. And I think that's quite important. And I think that's what I wish I was told initially. I will share my screen with you and take you through a few slides, but any questions you may have, put them in the chat. I may not answer them straight ahead, but we have, as Maria was saying, a bit of a Q&A time at the end, so we can always go through them in that sense as well. And it'd be lovely to hear your honest thoughts, because it's not as often as you get a chance to speak to a random clinician. So maybe just ask anything you ever had a question about, what doctors do in hospital or whatnot, for that reason as well. But pleasure to be with you. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just share my screen with you and start doing a bit of a presentation. I want to see, has anyone here present been to any of our previous presentations? I normally do a bit of a general talk on getting to medical school, so I just want to make sure I'm not covering some of the topics that you may have seen in our presentations before. So on the chat, if you're new to us, that's great. Has anyone been to any of our presentations before? And I'll give you a few minutes to reply anyway. There's an Instagram account that you can have a look at. We're trying to capture a bit of enthusiasm from the UAE, so do give that a follow. There's loads of opportunities to get involved in that sense as well. But as Maria kindly introduced myself, there's no need for introductions from myself anymore. This is my life, basically. This is every single angle on this picture captures what I do on a daily basis. So on the top left, as you can see, there's some celebrations for some of the awards that I've taken. That's Prince Charles over there. And then you also have, my daily job in the middle, so being a clinician and a doctor, also traveling and teaching at Harvard in the US, and writing some books and different publications. But let me just start with a topic that I always love covering first and foremost. Medicine is not an easy pathway. And so I'm going to speak to you a bit about the numbers, and these are just UK numbers. We can talk a bit about US numbers as well, but the UK certainly is one of the most competitive medical school programs in the world. It's also got a high reputation, so it's not easy to get in. And so the maths goes kind of like this, and I'm not good at maths, don't get me wrong, but there's 55,000 applicants each year roughly, and there's only 8,000 places. Now I put in there 1 in 10, although the maths doesn't add up, and the reason I put that in there is because sometimes you have more applicants applying for one particular university, and you end up being one of 1 in 10 per place, or 1 in 20 per place. So on average, usually around 1 in 8, 1 in 10, depending on the applicants in that year. So if you think about it, it's kind of around top 10, top 15% of the applicants for that reason. So why am I showing you this picture? Do you think it's because I'm trying to scare you to never apply? Because if only the top 10, 15, or 20% of the applicants would get in, what's the point of me even applying? But that's wrong. That's not really why I'm showing you this picture. The reason why I'm showing you this is because I trust you too could be part of that cohort of top 10% of the applicants. And all you have to do is think differently. And imagine that you're in a line with 10 other students. So just imagine a band of students around you, all interviewing at the same time, right? There's 10 of you in a line there, and everybody does the same thing. They go take one step forward, they say the same thing. I love medicine because I love helping people. I love medicine because I love science. You're watching them, you're the one person who sits in the line and takes a step backwards and looks at the whole bigger picture. So I want you to zoom out, see what others are doing, and don't do that. That's essentially what you need to do, because the common mistakes are made by everyone. A classic average student will walk into the room, into my interview, and I've sat on several panels, and would walk in or be on Zoom nowadays with COVID, and I would say, welcome. They'll say, hi, thank you. I'll ask them, what's your name? They'll say, Miriam, nice to meet you, or whatever, they'll say. And then I would start, so why did you choose to do medicine? And they'll start by saying, so I first found out about medicine when I was around 5 years old, when my mom was diagnosed with, that's the classic story. Now, let's flip that around. If you want to be the top 10%, you need to change your behavior. And if you want to be that person that stands out from the crowd, regardless of whether you want to apply to the UK, US, or whatever you want to go in the world, you have to be the perfect medical student, that person who radiates energy and enthusiasm. And I know that may not come easily and naturally from the beginning, and it certainly didn't come from me from the beginning, but you just have to trust yourself, smile more often, and kind of fake it until you make it for that reason. So when a great student, a top 10% student, comes to me in my interview, they straight ahead say, hello, pleasure to meet you. Thank you so much for having me in spite of the COVID pandemic, whatever there may be that's happening. My name is, they introduce themselves even before I ask them what their name is. They smile throughout. Their behavior is completely different from the classic student, right? Now, the other thing we should remember is that everybody will give you the same answers. And I want to teach you to, again, be part of that top 10% for that reason, and try to look at the deeper purpose of a question. So whenever you're in a difficult situation, an interview or whatever it may be, let me give you an example. The classic question coming up all the time is this about nursing and why not medicine, and why medicine and why not nursing? So let's talk about that for a second. At the surface level, every single student will tell me they don't want to do nursing because medicine is more about the, the process of leading, of having more knowledge, or doing the science side, or, diagnosing patients and prescribing things, or doing surgery and all those things, right? They will talk to me about the differences in careers. And if some of you are thinking already that that's the case, it should really be about the difference in careers because that's what the question is about. Well, I would like to say that that's just a superficial side of this question. This question is really deeply asking you to reflect upon relationships with your colleagues in hospital. So the reason I'm asking you why medicine, why not, why not nursing, is not because I really want to hear, kind of like about the careers difference, but really because I want to see whether you have enough respect for the nurses and the colleagues you will have as a future doctor. Isn't that interesting? What a strange way to ask that question indirectly. But the truth is, I know 9 out of 10 students will sometimes say why doctors are better than nurses. And as soon as you said that, I've disqualified you because I'm not looking for the ego, the arrogant kind of like person. I'm looking for someone who's down to earth, looking for someone who respects the job that nurses do. So the perfect applicant for me, the students who are awake and know exactly why they're being asked these questions, the top 10% of the applicants will smartly tackle this question by talking about the nursing professionals and how great they are in the beginning. So they would start their answer by saying, first of all, thank you for your question. I'm glad you've asked this because I've had the privilege of working or doing some work experience placements where I've witnessed some of the amazing work that nurses are doing. And I would dare to even say that sometimes they work even harder than doctors. Is that true? 100% true. Or believe me, I sometimes prescribe stuff. Maybe I do some bloods now and then, but the nurses, gosh, they are always there with the patient at the bedside. They 100% work harder than we do as the doctors. And so respect where it's due, and say that you look forward to working with those nurses in the future. And that's the first part. And I promise there will always be a nurse in the panel, in the room, on the interview. So now you kind of like spoke highly about their profession too. They will enjoy that you're not arrogant and that you put your ego behind you. And now you can say, however, the reason why medicine is what I've chosen is because from school, I've always had a curious mind. Or you can say, you've always enjoyed the problem-solving aspect of diagnosing the patient, or, you've had a curious mind and always wanted to put the pieces together. But those are things that a doctor does. But remember, a nurse always does research. They can do surgery. They can do loads of other things. So be very careful with how you answer things like this. Anyway, I hope you get the gist of what the top 10% applicants have and what they do. And it's all about perspective. It's all about zooming out and looking at the people around you, seeing the common mistakes, and we can help you with that. We can tell you some of the common mistakes, and realizing what people do wrong so that you don't do it and you don't have to go through the cycle once more. So I hope this provides a bit of confidence for you to apply, to tackle those barriers, and think that there's so many, the 80% of the students all do the same thing. So you want to be in that top 20, top 10% bracket, and make sure that you stand out from the crowd through your different projects. And I guess we talk about this all the time, right? You're unique, but actually we all look the same in a way. If you strip aside our hair, our skin color, everything else, and we just imagine we're just penguins, and we all look the same. And so I guess when we talk about unicity, you really need to do something. It's your personality and behavior that makes you different. And so let me give you another example from this year's panel interviews, which I hosted for some medical schools. There was a student who came to my interview, and I asked him about their work experience. And I said, could you give me an example of a time when you've learned something useful during the work experience? Now, this student said to me, so there was a time when I was part of an elderly care home, and this is what happened, and this is what happened, blah, 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 right? So they gave me the answer. did I really want just that answer? Because I asked, give me an example of a time. I wanted that answer, but then I had another student after them, a student that was clearly taught on how to answer such questions. And this is what we do with our students. And we prepare them to give always more than they're being asked. So a student who's that top 10% would answer this question by saying, well, thank you so much for this question. I've been fortunate enough to take part in several work experience placements along the years, ranging from 5 weeks in this, 6 weeks in this, 7 weeks in this, learning multiple skills, including communication skills, listening skills, all those things. However, for the purposes of this interview, I will focus on one lesson that has taught me more than any other of my placements, which happened during, and then they give the example. The difference between this student and the previous student is that they showed off in a nice way. And I'll talk more about showing off in a controlled way and a non-arrogant way in your interviews by using that. But did you notice the subtle difference between the first student and the second student? The first student just gave me what I asked them, and they also started with using, some words that I didn't want to hear. Whereas the second student gave me an idea that not only did they learn one thing like I asked them, they have a whole range of experiences that they got involved in. So that's really important. Now, let me give you another example of another student who during the pandemic basically came into our interviews, and they said that unfortunately, because of the pandemic, their work experience got cancelled. And many of you may be in this situation. And so you may wonder, well, what can we do if our work experience gets cancelled? Well, certainly I would encourage you not to go into your interview and complain about it. Let's do a bit of a fun game. Think about your friends, right? Think about your group of friends right now, or people around you. So if we have any teachers during the conference now, just think about your family or friends. Whenever somebody complains in your group, do you ever listen to them, or do you ever enjoy that conversation with them? Psychologically, we don't like people complaining. We know that. We want some positive energy, some good kind of vibes in our lives. And so think about how when you go into your interview, we had one student who said, well, sadly or annoyingly, my placements got cancelled, so I didn't manage to do too much work experience, although I did some beforehand. And so you could sense they were angry and annoyed that this question came at the time when COVID hit. And on our side, we were thinking, hang on, we took the time to organize this interview for you in the middle of the pandemic. You did not have to travel. We did it via Zoom. We made sure you have access to the technology, to everything else. And we organized this. We took time out of our busy schedules to accommodate this. And you're here complaining about the process once again, kind of thing, right? And remember, the people organizing things from the universities already get slaughtered for the online teaching that's happening in the horrible situation. So remember that, be mindful that they're already quite sad about the current situation. So you rubbing some salt on the wound and kind of complaining about the lack of work experience isn't going to help, obviously, in that sense. And so they kind of just mentioned that. And also, a student having the guts to say that when people around are dying or because of the pandemic, and you being so selfish to think it's all about you with the work experience, it just tells a lot about your personality, doesn't it? And so be graceful and make the most of your circumstances. Come on, there's loads of online learning, online teaching, online work experience. I can provide to you loads of opportunities in that direction. There's loads of events we're hosting, and you can have a look. I've got a slide about this next as well. But there's loads of opportunities you can take to get involved in work experience online. And so instead of saying that sadly it got cancelled, you could frame it in such a way by saying that you're grateful enough to have the opportunity to join some junior doctors online and take part in some online work experience placements. And although sadly some of your placements were cancelled, we're all in the same boat. What does that tell me? That tells me you're down to earth. That tells me you're aware of the situation that is happening around you. So remember to make the most of your circumstances, and don't blame your circumstances. Don't point fingers, because it's easy to point fingers for the things that we haven't achieved in our lives, but it's hard to own up to them, and do your best to make the most of what's around you. And it's the same with those of you who are international students, the same for those of you who come from different backgrounds. I was an international student, and I'll tell you my story in a second, but I always tried to make the most of my circumstance, and play on the strengths that I had as an international student. So a bit of a story about what we are doing with our students, and you hear me referring to our students as the Academy students. So we run this Global Talent Academy, and there's a program for 50 students across the world that we handpick and select for a duration of a year, and we provide them with work experience placements. We provide them with mentoring on every single aspect of getting into medical school. And this is our heart and soul kind of project. There's an interview process for those of you who are applying, and the selection process is quite tough, but it's enjoyable, and we have a bunch of students who are achieving amazing things in the end, and hopefully getting into medical school by the end of the program as well. This is some of the things that we do. We do work experience, we do anatomy dissections, we do surgical placements, and we of course take students on board on our hospital placements as well. Sometimes it's useful to do this in person. With COVID, we've just done everything virtually, but that's worked really well. We get students involved in research projects at renowned institutions at UCL, Cambridge, Oxford, and other places around, so students can do their own research projects in that sense. So it's a bit of a community of students achieving things. And not only just achieving the project, but in the end, getting their desired courses and offers. And this is one of the great stories I had the chance of having the other day, from Nicholas, who's pictured here on the right, from Hong Kong, who got into his dream medical school, Cambridge. And so it's stories like this that keep us going in that direction. And it's also people like Nicholas from all over the world, not just UAE, Hong Kong, Japan, Singapore, as part of our Talent Academy. And they get the chance to present their projects in different environments. We use our wide networks to get you guys to present at different conferences. So these guys presented their projects here at the United Nations and World Health Organization and World Health Innovation Summit platform, where we had students from 14 different countries like Greece, UAE, India, Thailand, Hong Kong, and loads of other countries around. And so what I was trying to do with that is to kind of show you that those are the top 10% of the applicants that you kind of want to be part of. You want to be part of a select group of people who go beyond their limitations and go beyond the usual things, and get involved in loads of opportunities that are set out there as well. So does anyone have any questions so far on everything or anything that I've mentioned there? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to outline a bit of the application process for you, and then I'm going to give you some quick tips on this, and then open it up for some questions, and then I'll give some live tips and live advice in that sense as well. But let's see if anyone has any questions so far, and that you're still with me so far.
Thank you, Dr. Bogdan. It's incredible. Thank you for all this incredible information. I can't see anything coming through, just lots of thank you. This was brilliant. Thank you. Thank you. Sarah McCann says thank you. Elisa says thank you. Keely says thank you. Hala says thank you. Everyone's saying thank you. I really appreciated what you said about students doing interviews right now and doctors taking the time to make those interviews. And I think for students currently writing personal statements or college essays applying to medical school, really need to take on board what you're saying. I can't see any questions coming through the chat box yet. So let's keep going.
Perfect. And then if you guys put your questions on the chat, I'll be able to tackle them at different times. As I said, I'm very open-minded. By the way, I'm still in that student mindset, and I'm very young. Don't look at me as some old kind of fashioned professor or anything else. I'm very open to you guys asking anything. I think that's the joy of our organization, and that's the joy of working with students, where we're down to earth and we like to tackle any questions that you might have. And no question is stupid, because if you think about it, I'd rather you have a stupid question or fail in a controlled environment, or ask something that you thought was true and then getting some help about it, because otherwise you'll do it in your interview, or otherwise you'll do it in a formal environment, and you do not want that. That's the thing we do with our students when we do mock interviews. They all hate me for it, but in the end, I'd rather you cry with me on the webcam rather than cry with someone in the interview, in that sense. And so it's always best, doing as much practice as you can. So it's really, really important. So Somebody's asking about grades, and I will mention that in a second. So if you take a screenshot, this is basically the timeline that you're looking at in the UK. I can talk more about the US if you want me at the end, but this is basically the UK medical school application timeline. Feel free to take a screenshot of this, but these are some key dates I would recommend. Now, let me tell you something that you may agree or disagree with me, but by doing presentations in the UAE, both in Abu Dhabi, Dubai, and around the world as well, I've noticed that there's a common trend amongst the teenagers of, that are rising now, you're the TikTokers, the Instagrammers, and all the amazing, all the things that you guys are doing now, some digital skills that I lack, but also there's a change and shift in looking for quick things and quick fixes. It's normal to feel that way. I feel that way. I'm still part of a younger generation, so I can definitely understand you. I'm on TikTok, but I'm not good at making TikToks. So if any of you is good at TikToks, definitely get in touch. But what I'm trying to say is that there's a new generation of getting things done quickly and getting them fixed quickly for quick gratification. You see the perfect body on Instagram, you see the perfect car, you see the perfect job, you see the perfect thing that you want to have tomorrow. And that doesn't happen or work in medicine. So please remember that. Medicine is a patience game. Okay, remember, you have to be disciplined, you have to play the long game here. And so please start doing things early. For those of you who are in year 12 now, or just close to applying, you still have time, don't freak out. But for those of you who are year 9, year 10, year 11, please start as soon as possible. Get into reading around the subject, get into meeting doctors and people, speak to people like myself and Maria and everyone else, but make sure you start early. And I would recommend at least 2 years in advance if you are to kind of follow this kind of pathway in here, but it's not set in stone. You can increase the intensity and do it whenever you want as well. But let me just talk a bit about work experience. I'll cover grades, which was one of the questions as well. Work experience at the moment, I would just say, take every single opportunity that's given to you. Do online work experience. We have a virtual online hospital placement that we run every other month. So there's one now. There's one sold out in May, but there's one in June, on the 5th of June, which you can find out on our website. But there's an opportunity to basically get involved in work experience online with doctors and surgeons, and you get certificates that you can use for your application. Whenever I'm delivering a work experience placement online, I always want to embed and combine things where you learn about medicine, you see things, but then you don't go away with just that. I want you to know how to put that in your personal statement, in your letter, and I want you to know how to use that in your interview. Because otherwise, what's the point of watching someone do some random injection if you actually don't know how to talk about that in that sense? So it's really important. So virtual is as good as in person for now. Don't freak out. You do not need in-person work experience. The government approved virtual work experience to have the same weight as face-to-face work experience, and the UK government and many governments around the world. So please don't freak out about work experience. There's many opportunities out there, and watch our Instagram space for some more things, because there's a lot of virtual work experience placements that we advertise through there as well. There's also the event that I mentioned, which is on the 5th of June. You'll find that in there. There's also the entrance exam. So some of you may be familiar with the UCAT and the BMAT. I'm not sure if you guys have heard of them or if you're planning on applying to the UK specifically, but those are two entrance exams which are really helpful. The United Kingdom Clinical Aptitude Test, the UCAT, is basically a bit of an IQ test. Now, I know from working as part of an admission panel in the past, and my other doctors, colleagues who were part of the admission panels, I know admission tutors are advised to tell students and schools not to prepare for the UCAT. And why is that? Well, it's because it's counted as an IQ test. And so they kind of say, well, if you're good at it, you're going to be good at it regardless, right? Is that true? No, not really, actually. That's a big fat lie. And the reason is a big fat lie is because even though it's an IQ test, you can still do things to prepare. You can still look out for the layout of the test. You can still get some books. You can still look at related questions that could come up, you could still practice sample questions and do some questions. You may not be able to memorize the information. That's what they mean, by the way, by you can't prepare for it, because you can't memorize anything for it. It's skills-based. But hang on, if it's skills-based, that means you can prepare using some of those skills. And so one of the questions here was, is maths really important for medical school? It is, until you get in, and a bit when you're doing the medical school. But I promise, I wholeheartedly hated maths, and you don't have to, but I just did it because I had to. And I just had to do it. And that was it. That was end of story. You want to get into medical school, you get good grades in maths. That's the end of story in that kind of sense. And so I had to do it. And the reason you have to do it is because you don't want to mess up the drug dose calculation and all that kind of stuff. But it's not hard maths. Believe me, it's not like the intense advanced maths. I probably used year 9, year 10, year 11 kind of like knowledge for maths so far in medical school. So I would, and being a doctor, so I would not, the intensity you put for in those exams is not going to count for your medical career, I promise. So just do it for the sake of grades for now. If you hate it, if you love it, by all means, go for it. I just didn't enjoy maths, so I'm being openly honest about it. And so even the UCAT, for example, has maths in there. So preparing for those skills and doing questions is important, because let's give you 2 examples. One student who goes into the exam knowing it's an IQ test, so I'm going to wing it, I'm going to do it fine. And then there's another student who prepared for the past 3 months on every single subsection of the test. They know the format of the test, they know how much time they have, they know how it works. That definitely kind of trashed the other student who just went in with no idea. So then this brings you to the point of, why is this a big fat lie? Why do admission tutors openly lie about it, and they kind of like hold this to be true and say to people not to prepare for it? Well, think about it, guys. If you're an admission tutor, right? If you were at a medical school and you had 60,000 people applying every single year, and you had to choose between 1 in 20 or 1 in 10 students every single time, would you really want the competition to get higher? Would you really want everyone to be that prepared? You probably wouldn't, let's be honest, because you wouldn't have time to go through all those applications. So you need something that just cuts through that application pile. And that's exactly what those entrance exams are truthfully for. The UCAT and the BMAT, the entrance exams, would reduce the application numbers up to half, even probably more than half. Because what happens normally is, if you meet a threshold, the computer selects you for an interview. If you don't meet a threshold, they don't care about your work experience. They don't care about your personal statement. They don't care about what you wrote. You'll just be taken off the list by a computer, not by a person. So don't gamble it. Don't feel like you're special in the sense of, oh, even if I got a low grade, maybe I'm lucky this year. Well, if you haven't met the threshold, it's not me making the decision. It's a Microsoft, whatever software coding kind of like thing that just cuts you off the list. And then you get rejection. Then you think, but my personal statement and work experience were really good. Yeah, but your grades or your UCAT weren't. And so I never even had a chance to look at your file, because I don't have time to look at everyone's files. Okay, so that's the sad but truthful situation with medical school applications. And not many people will admit that to you. But that's kind of like what we do. We kind of like to kind of give you the insight, tips and tricks to kind of be aware of how the application process is being driven. One of the surgeons involved in our organization was on the admission team at one of the famous London universities. I'm not going to name them, but essentially they had personal statements, so letters, and they would throw them into the bin without reading them, because the students would not meet some other requirements. So they would never even hear your story if you actually didn't meet the tick box requirements. How sad is that? Because should grades or should this stupid exam really dictate what makes you a great doctor? It shouldn't. And I think that's the sad truth about the application process. So remember that it is quite competitive for that reason, and it doesn't tell me that you're a great doctor. What tells me you're a great doctor is your interaction with the patient, is the way you behave with them. But to get there, you need to get into medical school first. So please focus on the entrance exams because they are very, very important. And there are yes or no. They're a bit of a black or white area. And the application process has black and white areas and gray areas. Black and white are grades, UCAT, BMAT. So the entrance exams and your grades. You don't get any of those, it's a fail. It's a yes or no situation. You have a good personal statement? That's a gray situation. It could act in your best interest and it could act to support you. You have a good interview performance? Gray area again. It could act to support you. You have good work experience, good projects, gray area again. But remember, the black or white, yes or no, pass or fail, grades, entrance exams. Don't forget that. Do not underestimate or sacrifice time for studying for some wild thing that you want to kind of write in your personal statement and want to do over the next 3 months. Prepare for your entrance exams. They're much more important for that reason. And the same with the BMAT. The difference between the BMAT and the UCAT is that some universities accept the UCAT, some accept the BMAT. Cambridge, Oxford, UCL, London-based universities, the top universities usually accept the BMAT instead of the UCAT. However, I would encourage you to do both, because then you don't place all your eggs in one basket, if you like that analogy in that way. But you're essentially kind of doing the UCAT first, seeing what grade you have. If it's an excellent grade, fine, no issues. But if it's not that good, then you may want to decide to do the BMAT to kind of maximize your chances in that sense. The difference between them is that the UCAT cannot be memorized, cannot be revised for in that sense, but it can be practiced for, like we said. And I urge you all to practice for it. The BMAT is much more looking at the scientific knowledge, and you prepare for school activities like you do for the BMAT. So physics, maths, biology, chemistry, you have a curriculum that you need to go through, and it's easy to prepare for it with your IB, your A levels, anything else that you're doing at the moment. So it's not hard. There's a part in the BMAT which is different from the UCAT, which involves a write-up task, and that's an essay. And my top tip for this exam is for you to get good at essay writing, because our international students, everyone in our academy, everyone we see every year, the reason they get a great grade or a bad grade is because they either do well or they fail in the essay part. Because we know the knowledge and the science, you all get right. But the differentiating factor is that third step of writing that essay, which can give you good marks or take away some marks from you. On the topic of personal statements and writing letters of recommendation, about yourself and saying why you want to do medicine, a few very quick tips in here. First and foremost, I really want you to start, let's imagine you're dissecting a body, right? You have a scalpel in your hand. What do I want to do first? I want you to leap for the heart. So grab the heart and take it out. That's exactly your first paragraph. I want to hear your why, your heart. In that paragraph, I want to hear why on earth would you sacrifice so many years of your life to do this profession in that sense. And the way you do that in a non-cliche way, you would do it in such a way that you indirectly convince me you love medicine, you want to help others, you love sciences, but don't tell me that directly. Tell me in an indirect way. An example is, whenever I study for, I've had a natural tendency for sciences across the years in school, and that's reflected by my grades. That's a fact, right? That's not cliche. That's just a fact. I've got good grades in sciences. Hence, I have natural affinity or tendency for the sciences. And secondly, whenever I study for biology, it's quite funny because I remember looking at the time and it ended up being midnight and I didn't realize where the 3-4 hours went by. And I made some geeky analogies between the gallbladder and the liver. And that's showing passion for the science. That's showing passion for the subject. That's an indirect way of you writing down or telling me in your interview that you love sciences. Do the same with helping others, and then move on with other paragraphs around the evidence of what work experience you did and what projects you got involved in. Move on to talk more about volunteering, what you learned, the skills that you gained in that sense. and then your hobbies, because you want to remain well balanced in that sense as well. And then summarize everything and go back to your heart. So in summary, the above makes you suitable for the next stage in your life, and all those things that you put there, but it will all fall into place slowly. I know somebody was asking in here about the grades, when are you supposed to get or care a lot about your grades to get into medical school? So Reem was asking this on the chat. So I would say, Reem, throughout is really important, but you can always save the day with your, as long as your A levels are great and your predicted grades are great, and that's fine. Let me tell you another sad truth. Sad truth is that grades act in a tick box manner, in a yes or no manner. We know smart people usually get into medicine. The fact that you're all interested in medicine now makes me think you're all quite sharp, and you're committed, and you're eager to get involved in this field, and you have what it takes for that manner. But remember, everyone who chooses a subject does it willingly. And so it becomes the situation where pretty much everyone kind of gets the grades, and that's sad, because you put so much work to get the grades, but it's not the differentiating factor at the end of the day, because you all kind of have them. So remember that, really important. And so I teach at Harvard, and I teach medical students on how to study effectively. And this is one of the things that we do for our academy students as well. I teach school students for that matter as well, but we want to teach you to study smart and not hard. And remember that if you spend 12 hours studying in a day, it doesn't mean you did much more work than if you studied 3 hours, because I know scientifically your brain can only study or focus in a day for around 3-4 hours of intense, deep work. So try to be smart. Try to work without your WhatsApp, without TikTok, without your phone. And I know that's hard, but use one of those silly timers on your desk, like one of those egg timers or whatever you want to use. But even now, I'm a doctor, and whenever I do a project or something, I set a 30-minute alarm and I go for it as if I was to go for a sprint or a run until my alarm goes off. I then take 5 minutes of break, and I then set the alarm again, and I sprint again. In the meantime, my phone is on airplane mode. I'm making myself hard to reach. I don't listen to anyone. I don't care. If you want me, if you need me, you can wait for another 30 minutes, unless the house is burning in that sense, right? Your parents will know where you are. Everybody can just come to your room if they really had an emergency in that sense. So make yourself hard to reach and invest quality time in studying. And whenever I teach Harvard students, as you can imagine, come on, going to Harvard, they're all kind of cocky, very sharp, very kind of egotistic in that sense. So I have a lot of students who say, but Dr. Bogdan, I actually study for 14 hours sometimes during exams. And I'm just looking at them and I'm thinking, you're not, let's be honest. I can give you the evidence from the studies that it's not possible to do that. And the maximum you can do is 3-4 hours. So then they say, well, how do you explain then that I study all that time? And then I say, well, obviously with YouTube in the background, with a friend in the library, with music in your headphones, all those distractions, of course you can go for 13 hours, but realistically, stop kidding yourself. It's probably 3-4 hours added together of intense work. And so trust yourself, do it in intense bursts, and then use the other time that you've got left to have fun. Do whatever you want to do with your life, but don't kid yourself that just because you're with a friend in a library having a chat about studying, it doesn't mean you're actually studying. And that's something that I wish somebody told me in school, because we go to school, but we never, ever, ever teach students how to study. And that's why I teach that at Harvard, and also I teach our students on the subject too. So in terms of the interviews, which is the final kind of step of your application process, I know many of you were asking if there's any other common interview questions. There's plenty of them. If I was to give you my top tips that I give to my students as part of our Global Academy, I would say be that person, again, who zooms out at the beginning of the question and asks themselves, okay, here's what. How will everyone else in this situation think? How am I, as the top 10%, as the top 20% applicant, will think? Example, what are the aptitudes that make up a great doctor? Every single other student, if you imagine yourself again in a line, there's 10 of you, 9 of them make a step forward. What do they all say? So there's compassion, there's empathy, there's communication skills, there's teamwork, there's leadership, there's knowledge, there's those are all great aptitudes, right? But the student, the classic student, enumerates them. Do I really want to know that? And I would now say, by the way, you have 4 minutes left to answer this question, and you've just jumped into giving me some random words, right? You're smart, so take a step back and remember what everyone would do. So now you have to think, why are you asking me to enumerate the things that make up a good doctor? Well, there's a few reasons. One, you want to see whether I have observed them in the hospital. Secondly, you want to see whether I've performed some of them myself and whether I have also showed or portrayed some of those skills. It's not a hypothetical question. I'm not asking you to talk about others. I'm asking you to talk about you. And so remember that, because you need to then start by saying, I've been fortunate enough to take part in a wide range of activities and multiple work experience placements, where I have shadowed doctors who have portrayed fabulous skills, including, and then you enumerate them, and then you go into the ones you want to talk about and say, however, for the purposes of this interview, I will focus on 3 most important ones that I have encountered during my work experience. First and foremost, empathy. Secondly, communication skills. Thirdly, knowledge. And then that's the introduction to your answer. And then now you can go into each and every single one of them and give an example for each and every single one of them, and then link them up to the bigger, wider clinical picture. That's the perfect answer. And they would clap at you for that, because that's the proper way to answer such a question, okay? So now you may say, well, there's also this idea of how do you not sound arrogant when you explain something? Well, that's a trick there. That's a very hard question for you to think about. But there's ways of showing off in a very humble way. Let's give you an example. Imagine if you won a gold medal and the Queen awarded you the gold medal, right? And you kind of come into my interview and I say, okay, why should we pick you? And then you say, well, actually I had a chance to, I actually won a gold medal because I did this project, and, I was top of the class and I did this. That makes you sound like a straight ahead, arrogant kind of like person. However, if you flip that around and make that about the other people that have supported you, I'm sorry, there's some building work that started just now, so I do apologize if you guys hear that as well as I do. But if you want to do this in a very humble and nice way, you can always try to make it about the others and what the others have said about you, and showing off in a controlled environment by saying that I'm grateful enough to, I can't even believe what's happened, because I never ever in my life would have thought this was possible. But through the help of my teachers, I learned a few skills and I managed to get involved in a competition. And with the support of my family and working really hard over days, I took part in the competition. And again, I still can't believe this is reality, but I was fortunate enough to be awarded the first prize for, or the gold medal at this competition. And can you see the difference between the arrogant person and the person who really made the most of how the others helped her? And you can always say, and I couldn't have done it without the help of my teachers or without the help of my school friends or my family, right? That's a nice way of showing off in a non-arrogant way. So remember that. Anyway, so as I'm just wrapping up, and I'll open up to questions in a second, I want to give you some life lessons before I end there. Remember that medical school is like this cheese model, whereby if you want to get in, you really have to be good on every single angle. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be kind of average in every single sense so that you fit the model. I wish I could talk to you about this for ages. Maria knows I could do this for hours and hours and weeks at a time, so we can definitely schedule a follow-up at some point. But there's a book that we did that has all the information that you need. If you struggle getting hold of it, let us know. We can send some books across as well at some point too. But some tips for you guys before I kind of end, and some tips on what I learned is, remember to always plan things and remember to write down what you want to achieve. Everything I've done in my life has always been written on a piece of paper and put in my wallet. And I know it sounds cheesy, but I always don't keep money in my wallet. I keep those kind of like dreams that I've set down and I've written down on my piece of paper. So make sure you write what you want to achieve down and keep dreaming about it, because even though you might not know the direction exactly, as long as you set some kind of direction and you move that way, you'll be able to to successfully get closer to your goal. Remember to surround yourself with mentors and keep knocking on doors again and again. Don't take no for an answer. And even if you see the door cracked open, try your best to push the door open or jump through the window whenever there's an opportunity, and be enthusiastic. And I promise that hard work always pays off in that sense. There's loads of meetings, fascinating meetings with people that you'll go to, and lots of success stories that you'll accumulate. But most importantly, it's always about the people that you help along the way, and the people that you successfully support in your team, your colleagues, your friends, your mentors. And for us, the biggest joy is our students, the ones who get into medical school, and you guys who will hopefully one day achieve what we never were able to achieve ourselves. And I think that's one of the greatest joys of teaching, for that matter as well. And so even when you're feeling not confident about doing it, like Sharon is one of our students from Hong Kong who always told me, I don't even know how people get interviewed from Cambridge or Oxford. I don't even know how they do that. I have zero confidence. And then they message you and say, we actually, you know, I got in, thank you so much for the help. So that's brilliant. So I'm gonna stop there. There's an online work experience placement which you can join on the 5th of June. As I mentioned, it's going to be filmed live from the online hospital. That's going to be online, and you can have access to that. So do have a look at that as well. Follow this new Instagram page, which is developed by the students actually, so by people like yourselves who've organized this online UAE conference, and we're trying to put more content out there for the UAE community. So definitely stay up to speed and stay in touch via the Instagram page. Thank you for having me. I'll open up to a few questions. And Maria, congratulations on an amazing and fantastic event. I hope the students enjoy this, and I look forward to taking some questions. I know somebody's got their hand up as well.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bogdan. If you stop sharing your screen, we'd love to see you full form here. You know, I'm always amazed by everything that you do. And today's event is a community event. We could not do this without Curtin University Dubai and our partner schools that have supported us through this in collaborating. We have Heartland International School who's supporting and collaborating with the UAE careers community. We have LDR International School out in Fujairah. Of course, there's also RAC Academy from Al Quwain, and schools across. I mean, we've had school joining. Dubai College joined us today, and we have Greenfield and Sharjah joined us today. There's schools across the country. Teachers have zoomed in. Dubai English Speaking College is always excited to have you talking to us. And every time I listen to you, the one thing that stands out for me, Dr. Bogdan, is your incredible commitment towards helping young people. I appreciate the honesty, the transparency, and the genuine nature of what you do. And I hope that students were really listening. So I do see somebody with their hand up. I'm trying to see who has their hand up. It looks like it's Reem. So Reem, if you could unmute yourself, but keep your camera switched off because we are recording, you can ask Dr. Bogdan your question. I believe you've already answered the maths question. There was Reem asked about her GPA, but let's see if that's what she's still wanting to know. Reem, you could ask your question, please. And I hope that's
hi.
Really listening. So
Hello.
Hi, Reem. We can hear you.
Okay, good. I still think I want to know if a B+ student that has a GPA of B+ can go and be as an A+ student or straight A student in the future. And another question is, do you really need to master physics, or do you need to know physics a lot to get into medical school?
Yeah, thank you so much, Reem. So I think there's a two-side question in there, which one of the things I'd like to mention is I wasn't a straight A student when I started. And I started kind of like doing this from, I think, year 10, year 11, I was starting getting myself in order, I would say. So I think you have plenty of time to get those grades. Remember to kind of think realistically as well, how much work you can put towards that. And again, try to build some healthy habits around studying. But I will also say that on the side of mastering physics or mastering chemistry, please remember, it's not about using those in your future medical degree. I promise I've not used physics once in my medical studies at all, or as a doctor at all. And so I can kind of openly say, it was useful for disciplining me, for making me learn different skills and, you know, studying and staying on top of things. So I would recommend doing it. That's not what I'm saying. But imagine you're studying for your driving test. The real driving happens on your own. The real driving and the way you learn how to drive happens when you take that car out and you drive it yourself. Whatever you study for the test and taking the test, it's completely different. So that's the same with getting into medical school. You're now studying to get into medical school. Real medicine, the way we talk with people, the way we deal with people, comes after once you're in medical school. So I would say, don't focus too much on knowledge for your future career. Focus on knowledge for getting you to the next stage in life, because that's what I wish someone told me before, because I used to see this as a crucial part of everything that I do in my life. And I would just say, keep your hopes up, in the sense of, I failed getting to medical school. I didn't get in the first place. And it's quite important to openly admit that. And if I didn't fail, I would have not tried again. I would have not written a best-selling book on getting into medical school. I would have not set an organization for helping international students to get into medical school. And I would have not achieved any of the other things that I've done in the past as well. So remember, it's worth failing, because that's how success is being built. I know we live in this world where success and gratification is at every single step in Netflix or a quick video or a quick fix kind of thing. But remember, great things come with failing. And if you have some people around you, like Maria, like some other tutors and mentors around you, or some other doctors or whatever, ask them how they failed and learn from the lessons, because it's always nice to learn from someone's failure rather than failing yourself in the first place. I hope that helps. And let's see if there's any other questions from anyone in there. And it could be about anything, by the way.
Amazing, amazing. You know what? I want to ask you a question, Dr. Bogdan. I'm really conscious of the time. I know we have our next speaker on, but this last question, and I promise we'll let you go back. You're busy, doctor, in the UK right now, but I do want to ask you, unfortunately, sometimes there are gatekeepers to medical school, and those happen to be educators. What do you have to say to young people that really are wanting to apply to medical school, but their teachers who are concerned about them with all genuine honesty? They're really concerned that they don't have those subjects. I'm hearing you say, I don't use physics. I wasn't an A student. What do you have to say to those students who really want to go into medicine, but who are kind of being kept out because the gatekeepers are not encouraging them to go down that path?
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting concept, because that's how the whole medical school application process is set up. And I think it's our fault for making that, or the system in itself, because you're encouraging only a grade allocation, or encouraging a certain type of personality to get into medical school, which shouldn't be the case. There is some merit to say, students with the highest grades can get in, but I do also think that's widening the gap within the people who should get in. So what I would say for the students who don't have the grades yet, or who are thinking of applying to medical school but find some subjects difficult, I would say this is what a doctor does. And if you do this throughout life, you're going to succeed at anything. Remember that doing things one at a time, brick by brick, layer by layer, is what brings success in the end. And I wish, again, somebody told me this in the beginning, because you could take every single subject and have a go at it and stay disciplined until you will learn more about it, and eventually you'll enjoy it. Although I said I hated maths, by the end of it, I got better at maths and I got good at maths. And so please try your best to kind of try and keep studying on a daily basis. Surround yourself with the right people, the right mentors, and who would encourage you to do that, and try little chunks. Instead of reading one chapter a day of a book, read one page a day, and do it slowly and kind of commit in the longer term. Don't get put off by grades. You can miss a few years out. Who cares? As long as medicine is a lifelong career. I would have given 3-4 years to do what I do now. So no matter how many years pass away, if you do in the end what you love doing for the rest of your career, you could trade a few years. You're young, just get through it at your own pace, and it's absolutely fine.
Love that. Thank you so much. Speaking of books, bringing us to the end, definitely. I mean, we've had our hands on the unofficial guide to getting into medical school. Our students absolutely love it at Dubai English Speaking College. So I definitely think anybody watching this, if there are librarians on the call, or parents and educators or students, you definitely want to get your hand on that book. How can we find it, Dr. Bogdan?
Perfect, thank you. Well, it's on Amazon or different bookshops. So Amazon is the best bet because they deliver all around the world as well. There's also a digital option on Amazon as well. But if anyone struggles, drop us an email because we have lots of copies as well.
Fantastic. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And
Thank
that
you for
brings
having
us,
me.
oh, it's such, we are thanking you, Dr. Bogdan. That brings us to the end of an incredible conversation. If anything, when you walk away from this conversation, I hope it's the energy and passion that you felt from Dr. Bogdan's talk today. There's lots of thank yous coming through. And the name of the book is, Dr. Bogdan, can you type the name of the book in the chat box? We definitely want to get our hands on that. And I want to thank everyone for joining us. Give a big shout out to our collaborating schools, Curtin University, Dubai. Thank you for being with us. Dubai English Speaking College, of course. I'm very proud to be representing Dubai English Speaking College. We have Heartland International School, DR International School, and RAC Academy out in Al Quwain. Thank you everyone for watching. If you are going to do anything, you want to stay on this call and join me with our next incredible guest, Dan Atkins, who is coming in to talk about managing your budget at university. Definitely a talk that nobody talks about, something that we expect young people to be able to juggle. And I'm so excited. Dan, we're going to give everyone a couple of minutes to kind of jump on to this call. And just to remind everyone that this is recording, so you want to make sure that your video cameras are switched off. We want to keep everybody aware of the recording.